know about this letter. I hadn't seen it.
Well, it's true.
Yeah, it's true. That's his signature. Do you remember that's his signature?
Yeah, that's his.
He
That's
wrote
his
pretty good,
signature.
not the wrote right better than I do. Wrote better than I do.
He probably maybe he had someone write this. Well, I know he had someone to type it or.
Well, I kind of
But
know
it's not.
his signature wasn't bad. I've seen his signature.
Yeah, that's his
It's probably his.
signature.
Well,
I could add a lot more to this.
what'd you say?
I could add a lot more to
Like,
it.
what do you mean?
Well, I don't. You don't want that anyway.
Well, could you tell me about some about your uncle and why your uncle might have written a letter like this?
Oh yes, things were bad. They were bad for us. We had to. If you were walking along the street, and white people came along, you got off the sidewalks and into the street and let them have the sidewalks.
At the time that this, did you ever hear? At the time that this letter was written, the cotton mill workers were having a very rough time,
Yes, right.
and they were trying. Could you describe to me? If you could read just a little bit of that letter and comment on it, that would be great.
Well, I should have my glasses, but the colored people, some of them are trying to buy homes, and the wages and their homes are being taken away from them. The payments cannot be made. And I remember all of this, but
Back in 1933, could you tell me how old you both were back in 19? Could you tell me that?
about 17, 18.
Yeah.
I'm 79 years old.
I was 17, she was 18 or 30. Because that's when my youngest
Yeah,
sister
around
was born.
around that age.
And
Yeah. Now,
Could you say, my uncle Elrod, yeah, my uncle Elrod wrote this letter, but I never knew anything about it, or just,
Yes.
go with that a little bit. Could you
Yes.
say that?
my uncle Elrod did write this letter. This is the first time I have seen it or heard about it. But
it's all true.
it's true. Everything he says is true and worse. Well, I've just said how the people trying to buy homes and losing their homes, colored people. And
Now, how come you think you never knew about this?
this letter?
Sure.
No, I knew about the letter. I knew about the Times.
Well, he would talk about things
would
like that, but I
talk
didn't know
about
he'd written a letter about it. Written a letter to anybody.
We
about it.
lived through
Talk
it,
about it.
so but we didn't know a letter was being written. We didn't know that. This is the first I'd heard about it. But it is true, as I said, and worse. The times that I lived down here until after I finished, then I went up to New York to live.
Now, did your uncle Elrod, did he work in the cotton mill? Could you tell me some about that?
At some time, I think he did work.
He may have worked in the cotton
He
mill.
might. I
don't
know my
remember, to be
father.
honest. When we were small,
did
he
for a
could
short
have
time.
worked in the mill when we were small. Didn't know where he was working.
But the jobs were cleaning and what else to do? Cleaning and whatnot.
Scrubbing the floors.
Scrubbing floors
Lady
and cleaning.
down
That's
there to scrub that.
maintenance work like that. That's what they did.
Scrubbing.
They did not work in the mills on the looms making the materials, the fabrics and whatnot. Until maybe years later, I think they started. That's when they began. I wasn't here then, but I heard that they were paying in the mills at that time $12 a week. I don't know just what year it was.
That must have been
It was
after
much
this
later.
period of
It
time.
was after this.
Could you both hold on to that letter for me at the same time?
I should put my glasses on because I can't see what.
Well,
Are your glasses nearby?
Right in my pocket.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I remember what you said, dollars. How many was that? Let me say what. I know the women were making $3 a week. The
Oh, that
woman
was-
cooking
Later.
and working, taking care from it.
I ain't gone now.
Who is this?
That's my brother
I ain't
coming
gonna-
there. He thought you better come and see what was going on. I
I
guess.
was,
Brother, she called.
That was
Uh,
yeah, that was much later. When the $12 a week was later. I can't think what.
yeah, then they,
That was much later.
you know, I know when they.
I remember the $3 a week wages.
yes.
Mhm.
$2 a week.
Yeah, I made $2 a week. I worked
Yeah, I
5 days.
remember
I made
that.
$2
I'll
a
tell you
week.
the thing that. Well, this will be real interesting. We'll just let your brother come on. You stay down. You tell him to come.
People in the South, you know, they control publishing. So therefore,
Nobody in the house.
Call.
Called back, nobody answered.
got some of your work?
uh,
Watch out, don't fall in that trash there. Don't fall in that trash. That's what I'm trying to stop the wash with those things.
You just coming from work?
Yeah, I just been working today. I was out in the garage shopping on the store after I
Maybe
come
you
from work.
can you can
Hi,
share.
everybody.
Hey.
These are the people that are writing.
Yeah, somebody called me last night. I believe it was last night. Was it you?
It was me.
I gone to bed and you called me.
Ah.
This is James
What
Allen.
is it?
Allen, we call him.
I'm
Allen.
the oldest
Oldest
nephew.
brother, and this is
That's
what I
letter
can't
that-
think.
Oh, yeah, Rod's
It's a
oldest
letter that
nephew.
Uncle Elrod wrote.
You
I
have
didn't
your
know anything
glasses?
about that letter.
Yeah.
That's a letter that Uncle Elrod had written.
I couldn't imagine what this is all about. I don't hear well over the phone anyway. I got bad.
If you're looking for your glasses,
I have them
yeah, you right there in the pocket.
here. Mm.
Huh? Yeah. Leo, you could sit here.
Now, who you say sent you that letter? Where did you get the letter from?
Mm.
From the archives in Washington.
Yeah. We found the letter in the National Archives in Washington,
Oh.
D.C.
Yeah, I talked to somebody some time ago,
It was me.
prior to last night. Some time
Yes.
ago.
Yeah,
I
she
don't
said
know.
it was she who
And,
you spoke
A
to.
couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. Now, that's like I told my uncle wasn't a college man or anything like that. But you can see by this,
Yeah.
by this,
I have to tell her that.
but he did have a lot of mother with him. He had more sense than a lot of college learned people. He was very smart in a way. So he just didn't get to go to school too much. He really had ambition. He had mother with. He did a lot more with what he had, and a lot of educated people did with what they had. I think he's instrumental in getting the lights out here in this neighborhood. Got that started in the mail. He made him expedite the mail business. They made him speed that up, you know, about getting mail delivered out here and all that. And Isaac could tell you some things about him, maybe. That I don't.
Isaac,
What?
The cotton mills is what she's interested in.
the
The
cotton.
cotton mills.
Cotton
You
mill.
ever know he worked in the cotton mill? You don't know about
Yeah, I guess he did down at now, I don't know what he did here. See, I don't remember. See, I can't remember back.
But you don't know when Papa worked either, there, do you? 'Cause that
Yeah, I
was-
remember when Papa went in
You
there.
do?
Yeah, I remember when Papa went. I remember Papa be out here on the porch watching this
Uh-huh.
hand in the face before daylight in the morning. We had a ledge that's on the porch. We had well water. We didn't have city water. You bring the wash pan out there and wash his face out here on the porch in the dark.
Getting ready to go to work.
Getting ready to go to work. Now that.
Could you read?
Say what?
Take a look at what your uncle wrote. The
I
first
read.
two paragraphs.
I read most of it. The colored people, some of them is trying. See, that's what I'm saying. To buy homes and that's he all right. That's my uncle.
Here, why
Yeah,
don't
he
you?
was- he was-
I typed it out so you could really see what he was trying to say.
mm.
Could you read the first part out loud?
This here,
Yeah.
a voice from the colored people in South Carolina. Please see there's something they've done to help him. I don't know why he said him. My dear Sir General Johnson. Will, no, I don't know how he said, will there be, got, will they be? There be, that's the way I'm telling you now, you know, so Uncle really very ambitious, but he didn't have much schooling. For colored people in the South on the New Wage scale, and on the New Wage scale, that's another sentence. In the South, I noticed in the newspapers that cleaners and outside help are not considered in the code of the mills. General Johnson, you know, in the South, especially in South Carolina, 95% of the cotton mills labor is white. And you see why they put in the cold cleaners and outside help. That would apply to colored labor. So I hope that you will not accept the code till some provisions is not are made, but is made, you got here, to raise colored people's wages in the South, which it will never be unless you take it in hand. You know, in South Carolina, a colored man may have got no job if a white man wants it. General Johnson in Greenwood, South Carolina, City and County wages that is paid to colored people, RFC. That's route-free delivery. Labor 50 to 75 cents a day. Domestic help. Porters, janitors, $5 and $6 a week. Cooks and chauffeurs, maids, women, $1.50 to $2 per week. Hotels, some of the bellmen working for what they hustle for. Let's talk about the bellhops in the hotel. Farm help, 40 and 50 cents per day. Wholesale house, truck drivers, $6 and $7 a week. Common labor, 10 cents per hour. Well, that's true.
They didn't tell, they didn't say, you know, how they,
What else do you
that's why the Ku Klux Klan,
Yeah.
Colored
Took
men
him-
have to pay the same for living product as a mill employer and every other man. It costs, didn't say it costs his, it costs him as much to live as anybody else in the mill, but the Negro cannot work in the mills. Well, he couldn't, except as a janitor or something like that. Back then the man couldn't work in the looms and things. All the colored man could do was clean up, janitor, cut the grass or something like that outside of it. Couldn't work on any machinery back then. That just came about after the integration, didn't it, Mr. Whittenberg?
Yes, sir.
The court could work on
Can I add to
the
that?
looms and things.
That at that time, the
Yeah,
law
well, yeah,
was
when that
a
happened,
Negro couldn't look out the same window as a white.
Mhm.
That's why he couldn't work in the mill. And they couldn't enter the mill the same door.
oh, of course not.
You remember that, don't you?
Back door all the time.
Then you go to the back door.
I know I went to.
Now, this could you comment on
To what?
what gave your uncle the courage to write a letter like this? And if he
I don't know.
wasn't-
He just had that in him.
He was always fighting
He believed in
a call. It
trying
was
to
a
get
good
rights
cause.
for the black man and for himself as well.
He was
You know,
always-
he even got carried out by the Ku Klux Klan one night. One of them
they
didn't
know
kill him,
that, yeah. But
and they came around there and
he
got he lived
also-
right
did
around
you
the
say he
corner
was
there.
instrumental in getting lights out here for
Yeah.
the.
Yeah, what I'm saying now. He
I
got behind
don't
the
know too much
city
about
about
it
the
because
lights
I
of
said I
Carney.
wasn't here. But
helped get lights out here.
he was always fighting for one thing or another. He wasn't afraid.
You asked why why he thought he wrote that letter.
You had a
Yeah.
picture of him, didn't you?
Well,
You show it to him.
he wrote that letter because it made him angry
Yeah.
to see, you know, how they were
It
treated.
wasn't
That's why he
right.
wrote that letter. I know that's why he wrote it.
We were just
And
downtrodden.
he was trying to see if he
and
could get something done about it. That's why he wrote the letter.
Yeah, he's tough now. He got went up to the J.E. Serene engineering firm here. When my nephew, well, he's not in the blood kingdom. He's Elrod's uncle. I mean, Elrod's his uncle, but not blood uncle. You know, Isaac.
Letter. Do you know
That's
what?
when he wrote this letter.
Yeah, that's the date. If you
Uh-huh.
look at that at the top, it's January 12th, July 12th, 1933.
Yeah, July the 13th here in 1933. And
You want to know what else? What else did he do?
I'll tell you, the specific period of time that I'm looking at is exactly when Uncle Elrod wrote that letter.
Yes.
So my study
Yes.
is very focused. And though I know Uncle Elrod did a lot of things later on, the reason I came here to Greenville was specifically to understand this period of time and to celebrate the fact that Uncle Elrod was speaking up for the black cotton mill workers.
he's telling the truth here.
Well, that's I said we didn't know about the letter, but after knowing about it, we can say it was all true. That's all I can say about it. We knew it was all true after reading the letter. We didn't know about it, but
And
after reading
You see, the black people were afraid. They were downtrodden. You just, and the white people, as I told you before, in those days, if you were walking along the street, the white people came along, you had to get off the street and let them walk on the sidewalks. That happened in those days. A lot of things happened in those days. That in fact I can't really, some of the things I can't even think of them.
Well, the
things
reason they got him,
terrible things they
the
did.
reason the Ku Klux came out that night was that, you know, they had a club, some kind of club, Professor Breyer. You remember Professor Breyer?
That's Jim Brown.
Elrod was doing that.
He was the only one
she
that was
said, what
signed
year
it.
was that? You know what year it was?
No, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't have the least idea.
Do you think that was in the 40s?
Oh, that was before the 40s.
Before the 40s. So did Elrod belong to an organization of people who were always fighting for black people's rights? In one form or another, was it?
Well, I don't know if he was on any kind of form or organization.
Here?
Yeah, I mean, when he wrote this letter, was he?
He was here in Greenville, South Carolina. Greenville, South Carolina is one of the worst states in the Union. In fact, the worst. It was the first state to secede from the Union. So
What I'm suggesting is, when he wrote this letter, was he?
No.
I'm wondering if.
Segregation, that's like it was all over. I mean, all over the South anyway. You couldn't drink. You had a certain place to drink water. Downtown, you had nowhere to go to a restroom. Other than some colored person had places. Didn't have too many. Colors didn't have too many business places downtown back then. And,
the buses.
Whitten Peak Mount was another town down there. Never opened no more. After that stretch.
But
Closed the mill.
I don't connect Uncle Elrod with any
No, he wasn't.
activities at that particular time. I don't.
so I worked in the mill.
Yeah.
Elrod Mill worked in the mill 4-hour time. See, down in Pels, there's a mill down there in Pels. I think that's where he worked. Don't you know? Papa told us that he couldn't, back then, you know, they had to draw his wedge. He couldn't draw his own wedges. The young person then, you know, the towns had to go pick up his money, every paycheck every week. He didn't allow him to do it.
That must be when they was at $1.50 a week. I guess that's when they were paying him $1.50 a week.
I don't know. But then that meal was in Pels, I think. They hadn't come to Greenville then.
I don't know. I'm talking
That's
about
where
the
they came
letter.
to Greenville. We weren't born then. No, we wasn't born then.
Over the South.
He was just talking about the way things were here. But as far as his doing anything and trying to organize, that letter was about, I guess, the biggest thing he ever did, as far as or could do, as far as that matters.
Now he did have that organization, some akin to the Masons. You know, he formed that thing. You know.
Yeah, that. But
He made him the Grand Master of that.
But as far as anything else, I don't.
Well,
You
what
see-
really happened back then was when elder people did things, they wouldn't let the younger people know about it. They kept it to themselves. That's why we don't know more about this letter than we do. See, they didn't go out and tell the children. And they're talking about,
Well, I can see how he wrote the letter,
yeah,
but because it's all true. But maybe it just wasn't
That's why
It's
we
something
don't
they
know.
didn't
We
show
don't
it
know
or
anything
anything.
about it. But they was grown, and the grown people then wouldn't let the children know if this kind of project was going on.
Why not?
Well, even when the NAACP was organized, I tried to. Mark Tubman himself tried to get in it. You know what they told us? We were too young. Mr. Jim Brown, Mr. Elrod Nealy, Mr. The man out of West Greenville, what was his name? Ran the store out there. Mr. Walker, and Mr. the man that lived on Alice Avenue in West Greenville. They were one, and they kept a secret about the meeting in the organization. That was in 1938 too. And so, therefore, why we don't know no more about the correspondence then is because they didn't let us young people. We're young people at the time. They wouldn't let us know anything.
Now, why do you think they didn't?
Because,
Let them, the
well,
young
what they
people know?
said,
Were they afraid or what?
well, see, children will get out and say things,
Yeah, they were afraid. That's what mom.
They afraid too. And there's a very few of them
trying to do.
that had the backbone.
And that's why he wrote the letter.
Yes, right.
That's why he wrote the letter, because things were bad and
Yeah.
he would speak up. No one else would speak up. Maybe nobody else in Greenville at that time would have even had the nerve to write this letter. But he did it. That's the way he
That's why I
was.
said that's the way it was about answering that letter in the paper. Contradicting what the white folks had written about the people blocking the street. Well, now, he's the only one that signed his name to the thing.
This was in, what
See?
year was this?
But
Huh?
some
38?
more had it. Some others had something to do with it too.
33 on
Yeah.
33.
They're more.
July 13th. I don't
Yeah,
have my glasses
33.
in my hand.
It is right there. 12,
Oh, yeah, I was looking up here.
33.
1993. Oh,
Oh,
this
that's
is
a-
1993.
They right there what you want. 12, 9.
12, 1933.
60 years ago.
Yeah. Well, things were bad, and he just took it upon himself to write a letter about things. He was the type that was always arguing about something about how we were being treated. There's nothing much he could do, because when he did, I'm wondering if this is the letter. Maybe this is the letter he wrote and signed his name to. Maybe that's why they took him out.
No, that's not
No.
the
It
letter.
isn't.
No, that's
This
not.
letter was about the people blocking the street on Green Avenue. That's what they took him out about.
Huh?
Blocking the street on Green Avenue, blocking the
He
street.
wrote another letter?
No, that was in the paper.
No, he wrote a letter. He wrote a letter.
No,
and
How
it
did
was,
you get it?
huh?
This is in the paper, in the Greenwood newspaper, and he signed his name to it.
Yeah.
Well, this letter he sent to Washington, D.C., straight out of Greenville.
I'm wondering if this is the same letter, though.
It isn't the
He
same
did.
letter.
No,
I know it's not.
no.
I know it's not written,
You
but I'm
mean
wondering
what
if
it
it's
was
about the
written
same
about
thing.
the
That's what
same
you
thing.
think.
If it's about the
Huh?
same
No.
thing, it's
No.
not about the same
No.
thing.
No, this explains why he's writing this letter.
Now, how did you happen to get hold of it? You did tell me once, I believe. You did say once how you got hold of this.
At the National Archives in Washington,
Oh.
D.C.
Well, he was writing this letter
Archive. What street is that on building?
to
on?
General Johnson. Anyway,
I've been in that building. I was in Washington about a year or so during the war. We used to go to the archives building. Hey, what street is it on now? What street is on?
I think cotton mill workers would be covered under the new laws that were going in under the National Recovery Act.
yes, as I said, he was into everything, anything that happened, because he knew a lot of wrong things were being done. So he just took it upon himself to write a letter. I guess as he wrote, he thought up other things that were happening to us, and he wrote about it, and he wrote to this whatever. I wonder if the man ever. Well, I guess I wonder if he ever answered it.
Okay, we're gonna stop for a second. Sounds like a little.
About it.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna ask you to say that one more time. Okay. Could you say that one more time?
No, I just said this is a letter that I don't know if the person ever received it, to whom he wrote it, if they ever received it, or if this is something he wrote and just was fed up and talking about the hard times that we were enduring here. I think that's what this is about. He was just talking about the mills and everything.
You were just saying that this is a letter that you didn't know anything about.
We knew nothing about this letter. No, we didn't know anything about this letter.
I never heard of it.
See, there are many letters been written
So this
not
it was
the public don't know
probably
about.
received
Cause
and nothing's done about it. That's probably what
Well, they
happened.
had to receive it. They had it there. when
Yeah,
you
that's
got it.
right.
They had to receive it. They
had to receive it. And I know in immigration that there's some correspondence sent, but never got a reply from it. It got to the party because it was registered mail. We know it got to the party, but it never was.
She wasn't.
See, keep it. They kept it secret because I know at one time that we were in the letter for equal pay for teachers. And
Well, that was later.
yeah,
That
I
was
say,
much later
but
than
it
this.
still wasn't published.
This was most likely this is.
Well, it was published in that Mr. Hugh Johnson received it.
He received it.
Yeah, I think, you know,
I mean,
Elrod wrote this at a very critical time. He wrote it when there was
and this
still...
man, General Johnson, received it.
He definitely received it because I found it in the National Archives.
Yes. And that is something that nothing would be done about it at that time. Nothing was be done. It's one they didn't tear it up and throw it out. That's
What'd you
the way
say?
things are. It's a wonder they didn't tear it up and throw it out. That's the way things were. And my uncle was just the type to sit down, he'd think about things and how bad things were. He'd write about it. But nothing was done. He's I guess about the only man here in Greenville at that time would have done it.
Now, he wasn't working in the mill. He was a carpenter, right? Could you tell
Yes, he
me, could
was
you
a
make a
carpenter.
connection?
No, he wasn't working in the mill when this was
No,
done.
he wasn't
Now,
working.
he may have worked in the mill when he was a younger man. He did work in the mill when he was young, when he was, I don't know, he could have been a teenager, I don't know. Just like I said, he couldn't draw his own wedges back then.
But in
The connection I'm trying to understand is, did he write this as if he wrote this as an individual,
Yes.
then he wasn't under the
Operating
same
himself.
pressure of someone who was a mill worker, for instance, right? Could you?
I imagine that was written as an individual, I imagine.
You just saw how things
he
were.
knew how
Very
things
nice.
were. He knew people that worked in the mills. He knew. At that time, I don't. Well, as I said, the people the black people were working in as scrubbing floors and things like
Well,
that,
that's all they could do back then, is scrub floors and things like that. Janitorial work,
Yes.
such as that.
which he said. But
You couldn't work in those looms and things.
and years later, they did.
And they couldn't drink out the same, they had separate drinking
Yeah,
places
well,
from
they
all the work there in the mill together. They had separate drinking places,
Different
separate restrooms and everything.
Different restaurants.
That's right, everything.
That's the whole story. Not a bit surprised. This is true, as we said before. It's all true, but we just didn't know about it.
That song
This is when we
bothered
didn't
me
know
about
about it.
it.
He was always fighting for one thing or another, and this mill situation is just one of them that he brought out here in this letter. But
I would.
As for his working in the mill, and I think he was a young boy, when that, when he worked in the mill.
Well, that was before we were born.
And probably not even in this, not in Greenville.
I want to take one more picture, and you helped me very much. How do you feel when you look at that?
Say something.
Oh, that's
It was terrible. It was bad. It just brings back so many memories. Just brings back so many memories. I remember how I was sitting on the train going up to New York, and at that time they burned the coal, and they I had ordered my ticket over the phone, so they didn't know whether black or white or whatnot. They just gave me the reservations. He thought that maybe someday they would. Maybe he thought so. I don't know.
No, I really do. I really think that Uncle Elrod thought that he was going to be listened to this time. You know why?
Well, see, what's the year did he die? He died in 60. That same year Mama died in 65.
I'll tell you why.
65.
He wrote this letter right before the code went into effect, and there was still a moment of opportunity for him to say, you have to honor the black workers and serve them too.
Yes.
I mean, read the last, if you read the last phrase, the last line of the letter, what does he say? He's really saying something.
Hope you will draw up a. You see?
Yes.
I hope you will draw up a code for the
For domestic
domestic
Or ask
help.
for
Ask the
ones.
one that is
Should
drawing
we
up
read
the
it like
code.
just as it is? That is.
What is going to be done about colored labor? Hope you give this letter consideration, and I will be glad to give you more
data.
On conditions. If you will like to have it, our president said he was going to do something for the forgotten man, and that is the Negro in the South. Very truly old. E.D. Nealy.
I was trying to think who was the president at that time.
I don't know who's
Roosevelt.
president.
Yeah. Why did he was in there for
Roosevelt.
4 seasons? Why should I have to think about that?
Yes, said it.
Old age.
Maybe the outcome of this.
He was in there for
letter,
4 terms, I mean.
Maybe the president knew of this letter because when he made a speech in Greenville, it came through Greenville from Warm Springs, Florida, Georgia.
But you were just saying.
I was
But before you get to that, you were just saying you think maybe the president heard it?
Yeah, I think he heard that.
Could you
These
say,
words
I think the president heard this letter?
because he's.
No, could you repeat what I said? Because we don't know what you're talking about.
I think the president knew about this. Why I say that is because when he came through Greenville on excursion from Warm Springs, Georgia, wasn't it? That's what it's.
Yeah, that's what it
Warm Springs, Georgia. I was standing at the railroad track up in Washington, over Washington Street. He made this statement. He said, any man is worth more than 50 cents a day.
Well, he didn't have to know about the letter to say that. That's the way it was. That's what they were paying.
I said, I think he knew about these things. He knew about them.
He knew about it, sure, but he didn't do anything about it. That's for sure. And he was in there 12 years.
I think he did do something.
You know how
Better when he got out.
You know how he helped us? By helping the poor white.
Well,
He didn't have us in mind at all. Mrs. Roosevelt was a more liberal person because she was only his wife.
He was working in the mill and working.
If he, anytime he was in there 12 years and didn't do any more for us than he did, no, he wasn't my favorite president.
I think he did do something. He did do something to help. He did things to help, and he got up this WPA things. Got
Could you
up.
start that again? We cut you off. I'm sorry.
I said he did help. He when they were working in the mills, making. You remember working 2 shifts. he had them where they worked 3 shifts. More people could work. Made it so more people could work. That's one thing he did. It helped more colored people to get work. They were getting work too, but they wasn't getting the high class work, but they were getting more of them were working.
That's exactly why Mr. Nealy wrote this letter, because there were these new codes that went into effect, and he wanted the new codes that went into effect to also affect the black worker, not just the white worker.
Well, I said he helped both of them. Well, he helped the black and the white, the poor ones and the
I
Negroes.
said he helped.
Well,
And
I
I
said
said
you
why
said he didn't
he
do
helped.
anything, but he did help
I
some.
said he helped by helping the poor white people.
Well,
he
that's
did not.
all right, he
He
helped.
did not have us in mind.
Yes, he did.
No, because we wouldn't have been oppressed all those years. Another president would have done something. 12 years?
We're not talking about the president now.
I'm talking about him. I'm talking about him because I lived through it.
Well, I know I saw a better time after Roosevelt came in. Things were better for me. I'll say that much. You know.
This is something, he belongs to some kind of organization called the National Council of World War Veterans. That's where you wrote this from.
Well, yeah.
You got him here as major.
Well, we seem to be going around in a circle.
Oh, that was really, this was very, 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 very wonderful and interesting.
Yeah, you know, when you called about that at first, you know, there's so much going on now. I said, somebody got some kind of scheme. I don't know, they're trying to work some kind of scheme. I got mad in the way, you know. I said, because some lady's been calling me before you called about something. And she'd wait just about supper time to call every afternoon. I got tired of being bothered that one.
Oh, they do that for
And she was after money. I
People
found out
begging
about
for
she was
money.
after money. Well, I didn't have any money. And I didn't care to talk with her.
No, I just wanted to show you this letter, that's all.
Well, I'm glad to see it because it's
Yeah, I'm glad to see it too.
Oh, can you,
as I said, I knew he was a fighter about things.
I didn't know he'd
So I'm
gone
not
this far.
surprised. But I'm just, you know, we never knew about it.
I've never heard of this before. Never heard anything about it. Yeah. He did form some kind of lodge here, you know, what they call his lodge? Some akin to the Masons. And he was the Grand Master of it.
I just want you all to exactly understand, you can cut me out. I want you to exactly understand why he wrote this letter, because he wrote this at a very critical time. You could explain it.
What, me?
I know you can explain it. He wrote this, you know, during at the point when the NRA. Am I on tape?
That's the person, and he would do it because he was always saying what we should do and what not.
When you all see a letter like this, and it's your uncle, of course, and you get this history back, what does it make you think about?
It makes you think about the kind of person he was. That just explains the kind of person he was when I read something like that.
You mean what we think about him?
Well, what do you think about how come the fact that you didn't know maybe for all these years
Yes.
that even back at that time that he was fighting and then you didn't know that? What is that?
Yes, he would. I'm not surprised. As I said, I'm not surprised. I just didn't know about it. But I'm not. That's the kind of thing he would do, because that's the person he would fight about things that were wrong. He was always up, ready to fight about things. Why does Sonny do this? I won't say the word that he used all the time, but what he called the people down here. He always would use that word. Naturally, he didn't use it there, but he was always fighting about something, and the white people were always doing something. We were downtrodden. It was terrible. So that's what he was writing about. One of the things he was writing about. And he figured that they should get more money. That's Uncle Elrod, all right, all over again. That's what he would do.
Okay. We're just gonna take a picture of from the back of all you looking at this. could read that last line again like you did before, where you wrote, hope you give this letter consideration. If you could read that and maybe even use your finger as you go
What
across
last?
it.
Yeah, the last paragraph.
Right here. Hope you will draw up your code for domestic help. I asked the one that is drawing up the code. What is they? He didn't say I said there is.
Read it like
What
this.
is? I just read it like it's got it here.
Start from, yeah.
What is they is going
you
about?
could-
Maybe
You know
stop.
what? Why don't you start with hope you give this letter consideration
Yeah.
and just
And
write
just
it.
read it as
yeah,
it
you
is,
don't have to
Alan.
correct
Just-
him.
just
That's
'cause-
okay.
yeah.
I don't have that part.
No, stop. She means start over and read this. Hope. Right, read it again, just as it is.
Hope you will draw up your code for domestic help. Now he's asking this.
No one talk, just
Just
read
talk,
it.
read it.
Just want you to
Johnson.
read it. Just want you to read it.
I asked the one that is drawing up the codes. What is they going about colored labor? Hope you give this letter consideration, and I will be glad to give you more data on content,
Conditions.
on condition. If you would like to have it, our president said he was going to do something for the forgotten man, and that is the Negro in the South. To do something for a forgotten man, and that is the Negro in the South. Very truly yours. You need it.
Could you if you just look a little bit this way, and if you could just do that line one more time. Our president said he was going to do something for the forgotten man, and then read your uncle's name out loud, if you don't mind.
Start right there. Our president said.
Our president said he was going to do something for the forgotten man, and that is the Negro in the South. Very truly yours, Elrod D. Nealy.
That's what you want. Well, you always use that Elrod D.
Mhm.
DeWitt, wasn't it? DeWitt.
Something about that letter.
Huh?
President must have known something about it.
See, the Ku Klux
Well,
didn't,
whether he did or not, he's
didn't-
talking about the
they didn't
president.
have
He said he could do something,
He,
didn't
you
he?
know, people were all excited about his having been elected. And he was saying what he was going to do. And he
Yeah.
did, as my sister was saying, he helped. I know he helped. I know he did help. Things were bad. But I was speaking about something else when I said
yeah.
by helping
Oh, yeah.
us.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Oh, yeah.
But he did help.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
Those was it.
No.
You're allowed to disagree a little bit. That's the one thing we have, right? We have democracy. We're allowed to
Yes, yes, right. That is right.
disagree. Thank you so much.
Okay.
You told me about the, could you tell me about the NRA, the NIRA, and how the black community felt about it?
Well, in general, the people didn't think they were doing the thing fair in this area. They wanted everybody involved. Wanted the Negro as well as the white to be involved. But in this case, the Southerners in Greenville were trying to keep the Negroes out of it. So what happened, that's some of the reason Mr. Nealy written the letter, because he was concerned about these things. He may have not been a employee of the textile, but he was interested, and he was in fact had a feeling for those that were working in the textile. Two things. He wanted more Negroes to be employed by the textile. Then also he wanted them to be upgraded, because the Negroes at that time were only street sweepers, floor sweepers and moppers, and worked in the yard. But they did not work on the machines or any case whatsoever.
Now, you told me last time that the textile industry was that Greenville was considered textile
Of the world.
of the world.
Yeah.
And you had described that when you came through the town,
Oh yeah.
you just saw one mill after another. Could you do that?
There wasn't but one way in town in Greenville that you could come without coming by a mill. And it was surrounded by mills, the complete town. And the conflare they had back some years ago was trying to incorporate the mills within city limits. But the people that owned the mills would not accept. At this time, Greenville had the largest cotton mill in the world under one roof, Woodsides. And there was but a very few Negroes employed. They had a law at that time, it was kind of undercover law, that Negro and white could not look out the same window. And they also had it whereas that Negroes could not enter the mill the same way as white. And so at that time, in the mills, there were not any 2 water fountains or 2 toilets. Because why? It was because there was no Negro employed there. But on the ground, they had a toilet and facilities, drinking fountain for the Negroes they could use.
Now, could you tell me
Sorry, getting a little. Could you?
Greenville but one way without entering a mill village?
Oh yes.
Could you explain to me how big this textile industry was, and could you use that
Yeah.
line?
Yes. Well, the textile industry at that time, we try to name a number of the mills surrounding Greenville. We start with Sans Souci, Woodsides, Monacan, Judson, Dunedin, Camperdown, Mills's Mill, and maybe I can't name them all, but that's a part of them. And mills, and the Woodside Mill was the largest mill in the world. And so on our side, if you go to the county of Greenville, at Fountain Inn, they had 3. At Centerville, they had 2. At Piedmont, they had 2. That was in Greenville County. But Travelers Rest didn't have a cotton mill.
Now, you were describing to me how you could drive through and you could enter Greenville. You didn't name the mills. You just described how many mills there were, and that textiles was what they did here.
Yes, sir. It was the center of attraction for Greenville. Mills. Textile mills. Textile mill were the importers of Greenville. They felt as if textile mill would close, Greenville would close. And as far as this, you could not enter Greenville but on one highway without coming by a mill. So it was very important at that time. And I think that's the reason some of these letters were written. That letter was written because if this thing would have gone, that was it, as far as majority was concerned. If the Negro was not considered in the mill factory in the RA, they wouldn't be considered at all. Because more than, I said, at least 85% of the people that was in Greenville at that time and surrounding Greenville was employees of textile mills.
And how many of those folks were black who worked in the mill?
Very few. I can name at some mill, I think one mill at Centerville had employees of over 500. I think there were 3 Negroes working that mill. I was accustomed to that. They worked on the ground. And the number of mills in Greenville, they went a little bit farther. They hired Negroes to scrub and sweep the floor. Went that far. But some of the mills in the county, only employees of Negro were on the outside in the yard.
But so going back to the NRA,
Go ahead.
it doesn't seem, Mr. In fact, I'll ask you this. Maybe you could tell me in your own words a little bit about who Mr. Nealy was, as what he did for his own job and why he took an interest in the black workers once that code came about.
Well, secretly, there were other people that was involved in this letter, but they wouldn't come out to the front. He was the only one had the nerve enough to stand up and tell the truth. And what really happens is that I predict, this is a prediction, there were a number of other people were contacted, and they were in a group at that time. But Mr. Nealy at that time was the only one to stand out. Why? We could say, because none of them were involved in working for the white. They figured they'd be fired if they learned that they were involved in getting rights. But Mr. Nealy was, I think he was self-employed. And at that time, his employment kind of failed because of the involvement with this letter.